But she and I somebody had to be
I can keep it. Yeah, we were on the way we're so close to well, this really got so I can see. But they were and it's so nice to see that particular tree. I know what Karen Cruz says hi.
Thank you, Jason, for the wonderful music and a great way to bring us to the here and now. Good morning, I'm Jim Black. I'm the service leader today. If you can take a moment to make sure your cell phones are turned off and other noise-making devices. And if you can't hear, just raise your hand and we'll adjust the sound. So you are welcome here no matter who you are, no matter where you came from, no matter what your background. And it's our custom to invite visitors and those who have not been here in a while to feel comfortable to stand, introduce themselves, and maybe tell us where they're from. So does anybody feel comfortable standing up? Because I see faces I don't recognize.
My name is Rick, and this is my wife Gail, and we are from Partyville, Wisconsin, just up here for a little respite.
Oh, good. Welcome. All right. On the back of the order of service, there are announcements. If anyone has any additions or modifications to those announcements, Terry will bring the mic. Oh, we got two. Okay.
With the help of Rick here, somebody dropped their cell phone on the way in. It has on the back of it, VRBO. Oh, Tim, there you go.
Hi, Judy Brudd. If you haven't had a chance to meet Jennifer Miller, she is having 2 coffees coming up again, and she's running for our circuit court or judge. Fabulous candidate. It's nonpartisan, so I feel I can bring that up here at the UU. Tomorrow, it's going to be at Al Johnson's at 9 o'clock. So, oh, it says 9 to 11. I don't. I think it's 9. It's printed as 9. And then on the 10th, it's going to be at the Peach Barn from 1 to 3. So if you haven't met her, it would be a great chance to ask her questions.
Lindley's gentle reminder for you, all you gamesters. After the talk back, we will be playing board games in the gathering room. So join us.
Okay, this is my final announcement about birthdays. If you have not signed one of these to tell us the year of your birth, then you will start getting nasty emails from me. So I would much prefer if you would do this. Many of you have. I'm at about 50% now. But for those of you who've been here the last few weeks, you know that we have your birth dates correct, except for about half of you. You know, we have, well, Angela isn't here today, but I picked on her last time. Angela Lynch is 127
Ooh,
based
she
on
looks good for
our,
127.
so random numbers were put in for your birth year. And so please, there are 2 of these boards on Sarah's desk. If you would please fill them out just with the birth year. We have your dates, but we want to make sure everyone's is correct. Because as you know, the Caring Committee likes to have parties. And so this last year, we celebrated with all of our octogenarians and above, those I don't know what 90 years, nonagenarians. So we need to know when you're going to celebrate. So please do this. Otherwise, yes, our Caring Committee is going to start sending emails to those of you that we just want to verify that your dates are accurate. Lindley's, on the other hand, does not want to change hers because she's only 7 years old in the computer. So thank you very much. To no one other than all of the members of the UU. Thank you.
That was such a long announcement. I'm a year older.
All right. Today, we highlight the 7th principle, UU principle, which I think is appropriate for today's speech on Patagonia, which is a beautiful part of the world. And that's the respect for the interdependence web of all existence, of which we are part. It's a beautiful part to be of. Chalice lighting. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom, we strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. The opening words, "We belong to the earth," attributed to Chief Noah Stealth. This we know, the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. This we know, all things are connected like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life, we are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. Please stand if able for the hymn 134, Our World is One World, and remain standing afterwards for the unison affirmation and doxology. for the unison affirmation. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. This is the time in our service where we take the opportunity to share a joy you may have or a concern to lighten your burden. Terry will bring the mic around. And for those watching the service virtually, please identify yourself as they cannot see who is speaking. And if you share something about somebody else, please make certain that you have permission. Are there any joys or concerns? Here we go.
Karen Winzen's here. I spent quite a bit of time in Oaxaca and just returned about, well, not even a week ago. The Fickuses say hello. They will be back up here in about a month to open up their cottage or whatever, farmhouse. And I have never seen Oaxaca as dry and barren. There's been a major drought. They're rationing water. And when you fly in or out, all you see is brown. My third thing is that I must have really pissed off Montezuma somewhere in a previous life. I thought I had it cured. And I thought, well, I'll be able to make my plane after all. And I got aboard, and 2 hours out of Detroit, I was sitting nonstop in the bathroom.
Oh.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was this worst that I've ever had.
Oh.
Some sad news to report. Our beloved friend Susan Leader's brother-in-law died suddenly of a heart attack a few days ago. He was married to Mary, who was our pianist and did the beautiful memorial service for Susan. Keep them in your thoughts. Their daughter lives at the farm now, Christy, and her husband Ryan.
Dave Vermillion, also back. I was gone mainly to Oaxaca with Karen for, let's say, I think I was 6 weeks in Oaxaca. But then the final week, I was in Puerto Vallarta with Karen Cruz. And those of you that remember her from a few years ago, she definitely misses us and would love to come back. But she spent 6 months volunteering in Puerto Vallarta. And of course, as a former teacher of Spanish, she volunteers at what's called a refugio, which is like a thing for homeless kids, and is doing very, very well. And she and Ken Falk is still there. Last he told me was he'd probably be there another 6 weeks. He doesn't know for sure, but he doesn't want to come back. Anyway, right now, as we speak, they are on their way down to Miss Maloya, which is the beach where Night of the Iguana was filmed. So I'm sure they're going to have a good time. And again, she says hi.
Hi, Mark Richards. So I just want to share kind of a joy that I had yesterday. I drove down to Madison for a march around the state capitol with the Poor People's Campaign and Moral Revival is how it was built. It was quite an event. There were several hundred people there. I connected with folks from UU churches in Madison, FUS and James Reeb. Folks were there. We walked around the Capitol, we shouted, we chanted, we sang songs, and then we went to one of the local churches and people spoke. And it occurred to me that the reason we have such a deep political divide in this country is that there are so many people who are angry because they're not being heard on either side of the political lines. And this is where the anger is coming from. And we really need to get leaders in our legislatures and in our Congress and even in our local offices who are going to pay attention to what we have to say.
Thank you. And my joy is that, Mark, that you're back here healthy after 2 major surgeries.
It's been an interesting 3-4 months, to say the least.
Joys and concerns. My joy is that I have a mind and a body, and my mind is telling me, yes, you can do this. And my body is telling me, you better think that over once again. I have a birthday the middle of this month, and I will be 87.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Oh, no, that's it. Okay, at this time, we'll take up the offertory. Please be generous for the support of the fellowship, and recall that you can make donations online, which is safe and secure. So, thank you. Thank you. And today we welcome back Gustavo Fares. This is your 4th time here? 4th time, wonderful. He is a native of Argentina. He is a professor of Spanish and Latin American studies at Lawrence University. He's author of several books and was a Fulbright visiting professor from Mendoza, Argentina in 2004. And he recently traveled to Patagonia with his wife, Lori, and his presentation will touch on the firsthand knowledge of that region. And after the service, you may join us in the gathering room for coffee and refreshments. And at approximately 11:15, chimes will sound and we'll begin to talk back on this side where we can hear more of the topic of Patagonia. So, thank you. Now we'll have a moment of quiet to clear our heads, so we will be open to Gustavo's presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Sarah, Jim, for the invitation. Thank you, Jason, for the wonderful music. Thanks for the congregation for inviting me a fourth time. It's always a thrill to be here with such an interested and interesting audience. Picture this, a landscape where the winds whisper tales of ancient civilizations, where glaciers stand as a timeless sentinels, and where the spirit of explorers echoes through the mountains. My wife and I spent 2 weeks traveling in Patagonia in December 2022, and I'm thrilled to share some of those impressions with you. I'm calling this talk Patagonia, a journey to the end of the world, because we really were at the end of the world. Some of you have been to Patagonia, some of you have relatives who are there now, so you can add your knowledge to this presentation in the Q&A. I'm going to talk about the name, how to get there, the areas, and the places we visited. And we're going to share with you some stories about those places. What's in a name? Let's start with the basics. Patagonia is a name that resonates with mystery and intrigue. It literally means land of people with big feet. Feet, yes. And this is because when the first Europeans arrived, they saw snow and they saw large footprints in the snow. And they thought these lands were inhabited by giants. They were in fact just the local communities wrapping up their feet with animal furs to protect them from the elements. And I say snow because it snows, not only in the winter, but also in the summer. So land of people with big feet, not like our mythical Bigfoot, but a reference to the local communities. And this name stuck. So Patagonia is now a region, both in Chile and Argentina, that encompasses a huge territory. In Argentina, it's the place where we have 5 of our 13 provinces. And it's about half of the territory of the country. And the same goes for Chile. How to get there? It's about a 20-hour trek from Appleton. You go to your hub, you go to another hub, and then you take a 9 to 10-hour flight to Buenos Aires. Hopefully you spend a couple of days there recovering from the trip. And then you take another plane, 4 hours, to the southernmost city in the world, Ushuaia. It has an H there, but we don't pronounce it. We just say Ushuaia. And if you have a map, it's right there. It's the last city you see in the south. The region in Argentina has 3 areas: the Andes, the desert or the steppe, and the coast. In the Andes, you have lakes, glaciers, fjords, touristy spots, ski resorts, forests. So it's a very nice area. We call it the Argentine Switzerland. The steppe doesn't have much in terms of grain, agriculture. It has wind. And wind lately has become a resource for clean energy. So Argentina is trying to harness that wind in the Patagonian desert and send it to the cities, especially to Buenos Aires. And then you have the coast with southern Wales and penguins everywhere. The capital of the southernmost province in the world is Ushuaia, and it's located in the province called Tierra del Fuego. You have it in your maps, which means land of fire. And why the name? Because when the Europeans arrived there, they saw huge bonfires in the coast. These were the bonfires the indigenous communities would use to warm themselves, again, both in winter and in the summer. The temperature is cold, but it's not very extreme. It's more or less like northern Alaska, cold in the winter, a little cold in the summer, and with lots of snow. Ushuaia is the southernmost city in the world. And it's not just a city. We say that is a testament to resilience. There, the first inhabitants were the indigenous communities, whose presence dates back thousands of years before the Europeans arrived. Their names are not familiar to us: Mapuche, Tehuelche, Onas, Yagans, and Araucanians. When my wife and I took a trip in a ship in Lake Argentino, our guide was a Mapuche woman who told us, we didn't disappear, we're still here. We just assimilated to the culture. The first European to arrive in Tierra del Fuego was Magellan in the early 16th century. And nowadays, the strait between the Atlantic and the Pacific bear his name, the Strait of Magellan. In 1578, Sir Francis Drake was the first British who arrived to Patagonia to claim the land as New Albion for Queen Elizabeth I. And nowadays, the area between southern Patagonia, Cape Horn, and Antarctica is called the Drake's Passage. This is a very stormy place because the Atlantic and the Pacific get together there. And as you may know, the Pacific and the Atlantic are at different levels. So when they get together, they produce storms and huge waves, which some of you have experienced. From there, from Ushuaia, you take your cruise to Antarctica. And that's where most of the cruise ships board their passengers and cruise. Another European to arrive in the region was Charles Darwin. We know he was in Galapagos, right? But before to get there, he had to go through the Strait of Magellan. And this is a wild story. Bear with me. In 1826, the British ship HMS Beagle arrived in the area to explore and claim the territories. Going back to England, it took with them 4 young natives who were teenagers, really. They were named with very weird names. Boat Memory, who died of smallpox shortly upon arriving to England. York Minster. Fuegia Basket, the only female. And Jemmy Button. Remember this name, Jemmy Button. After some 9 months in London, they were summoned by the Queen, and they appeared before the King and Queen at St. James Palace. They were taken back after 3 years to their land. The hope was that after being, quote unquote, civilized, they would civilize and Christianize their fellow men and women. In 1831, they arrived back in Tierra del Fuego, again in the HMS Beagle, in a trip that took with them a young 22-year-old naturalist in his first trip outside of Great Britain. This was Darwin. It also took a church missionary society catechist, Richard Matthews. No sooner they arrived in Tierra del Fuego that the York Minster, Fuegia, Jemmy, and boat shed their clothes, jumped in the water, and lost every trace of quote-unquote civilization. There is more. The catechist in Ushuaia didn't make it too long. He died of exposure and hunger. So 20 years later, the Church Missionary Society dispatched another ship with another missionary 21 years later, they arrive there, and the captain, not knowing what to do, start screaming, Jimmy Button, Jimmy Button, hoping somebody would answer. And Jimmy Button answered in English. He came to the ship, asked for clothes, dressed up as an Englishman, had lunch using utensils, speaking some English, and after that he took the clothes, jumped in the water again. So Ushuaia began as a missionary settlement in 1869, but it grew as the result of a prison. The Argentine government established there a jail that was built between 1902 and 1920 by the inmates themselves. It was supposed to lodge re-offenders, but it ended up with a mixture of the most dangerous criminals. The inmates with good behavior would be allowed to take classes in the workshops and work outside. And work outside meant to take a little train that would take them 2 or 3 miles to the forest, where they would cut trees to warm up the prison. And nowadays, we can go there, we took the train, and you can see the tree stumps cut at different heights, because it depended on how high the snow was the day they were cutting the trees. It was a brutal place. It was shut down in 1947. One of the most famous inmates was the tango singer you may have heard of, Carlos Gardel. He was there because of some gambling debts. And around Ushuaia, there are offshore islands, which you have here in your map. You may have heard of the Falkland Islands and the Falkland Wars. Well, I'm here to tell you the real name is Malvinas. This is a territory claimed by Argentina and Great Britain since the middle of the 19th century. In Argentina, we always say Malvinas are Argentinians. The first thing you see after you leave the international airport is a sign that says Malvinas are Argentina. You get to Ushuaia, you see the sign that says Malvinas are Argentina. You get to Bariloche, you see a sign, and so on. You see the same sign in all the buses, subways, and transportation in Buenos Aires. So it's something that we learn, Argentinians, we learn from kindergarten. Well, the war in 1982 tried to prove that, and it failed. The military government invaded the islands, and after a 10-week war with Great Britain, the Argentine forces surrendered. There was a bad outcome for Argentina with good political results. It ended up the military dictatorship in charge since 1976 because they lost the war. And since 1983 on, Argentina has had democratic governments and free elections. From Ushuaia, we took another plane northwest to the town of Calafate. You have there Lake Argentino. Calafate is a town by the lake. It's by the Andes. It's in between the Andes and the beginning of the desert. Lake Argentino is the largest lake in the country. The town is right by the lake, and there are some walkways where you can go walk and look at the impressive Perito Moreno Glacier, which is nestled in the lake. The glacier is one of the few still advancing glaciers. All the other ones are receding. This one is still advancing. And you can see the calving of the ice in the turquoise waters of the lake. Now, in March is when that happens in earnest, and there is all kinds of videographers and photographs being taken from that phenomenon. This is also, you may be interested in knowing, the summer residence of the Kirchner family. The Kirchners governed Argentina for 20 years, from 2002 until 2024, 22 years actually, until the current president, Javier Milei, who recently visited the US and visited Trump, was elected. This is also close to two areas that are very touristy: El Chaitén, which is a paradise for trekking, and the Torres del Paine National Park in Chile. From Calafate, we flew to San Carlos de Bariloche, which is in Upper Patagonia. It's a very touristy town nestled between the forest, the mountains, and the lakes. It is by a lake named Nahuel Huapi. It has one of the two largest ski resorts in Argentina, and it's a beautiful area. We call it the Argentine Switzerland. It has had some famous visitors throughout the ages. In the 19th century, that's where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid settled. They settled there, escaping their past, trying to escape their past from the life of crime they led here in America. They settled there in 1901 in the town of Cholila, which was at the time a Welsh colony. But they couldn't escape their past. In 1903, a former sheriff from Texas, Commodore Perry, arrived in the area and recognized them. So they fled first to Chile and then to Bolivia, where they died in 1908. Another famous visitor, Walt Disney, in the 1940s, he traveled with a company of artists to Peru, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, seeking inspiration for the company's sixth animated film, Saludos Amigos. And in Bariloche, he saw the landscape in a forest of arrayanes. Arrayanes is a local tree that usually grows alone, but here we have a forest. And that's the forest that he used in the animated film Bambi. Another famous visitor, Obama, and Lady Diana Spencer also visited Bariloche in 1995. There are some challenges in Patagonia brought about by climate change. It poses a threat to its delicate ecosystem with glacial retreats, altered precipitation patterns impacting the whole region. Conservationists are at the forefront, working tirelessly to mitigate these effects through advocacy, research, education, and sustainable practices. One of the most important conservation efforts is the Tompkins Conservation Initiative. Tompkins is a former CEO of the Patagonia clothing company. And he and his wife, Christine, started the Conservation Initiative together with the National Argentine Parks Administration. The Conservation Initiative has focused on land conservation, acquiring vast tracts of land for the creation and expansion of national parks managed by the Argentine government. One of the results of the increasing number of protected areas has been the creation and expansion of ecotourism and other activities related to the goal of achieving sustainable development for the region's community. So ecotourism is a way for the local communities to make a living without having to cut the trees or exploit the resources. Patagonia is also a place politically charged nowadays, because in the Kirchner administration, there was an agreement for China to build two hydroelectric facilities there. The agreement has brought some problems between Argentina and the United States because the United States doesn't want China to have a footprint in Latin America through Argentina. So there is still some tension regarding those hydroelectric facilities. Ushuaia also wants to increase the number of cruises going to Antarctica, and for that it needs a new port. And the Chinese are all too eager to build the new port, but the United States is asking the Argentine authorities not to allow that. We'll see how that plays out with the new president, Javier Milei. I want to conclude with a call to preserve. In closing, our journey through Patagonia is more than a travel log. It's a call to preserve the pristine landscape, honor the rich cultural and historical heritage, and ensure that this corner of the world remains a sanctuary for generations to come. As we stand on the precipice of the unknown, we may be inspired to be guardians of nature and stewards of this extraordinary land. And I hope we can continue the conversation in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Gustavo. And to discuss what is a world gem, Patagonia. And so hopefully we'll get a little more depth in the talk back afterwards. Thank you. So please stand if able for hymn 207, Earth Was Given as a Garden. And I think we'll start talk back a little after 11. I'll ring the chimes rather than 11:15. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. This we carry in our hearts until we meet again.